If you've been watching me long enough, you know the one storytelling device I'm not particularly fond of is the workaholic father. What is that? Well, it often involves a plot where a father or sometimes a mother is swamped with work, and thus does not have too much time to spend with their children. A lot of these usually involve the parent learning some lesson about the importance of family and vows to spend more time with the offspring. So what is it about this that bothers me so much? Part of my problem comes from the way the children are written. In these kinds of movies, they're often portrayed as whiny and complaining that their father does not spend enough time with them. This can be an interesting conflict to explore in a movie, and a comment on the way companies work their employees to the bone. However, that's not usually the route taken with these films. Because the filmmakers want the father character to be sympathetic, they make sure he's someone we root for and hope things work out with his family. They show how hard he works to put food on the table and how much he regrets not having more quality time with his children. This creates the problem of having the children come off as ungrateful brats who don't realize how much he does care for them, and the reason he's working hard is to make sure they have a good life. An example is the 2003 version of Cheaper by the Dozen with Steve Martin. In that movie, Martin's character gets a high-paying job that allows his family to move to a bigger house with more space. A family, need I remind you, that has several children living under the same roof. Throughout the movie, he does so much to make sure he's there for his children, and even starts coaching his sports team from home. And yet, they complain almost the entire time, because how dare he accept a better job that will only benefit them? Another movie that annoyed me in that regard was Mr. Popper's Penguins. Jim Carrey's daughter hates him, even though he frequently visits her and her brother. She changes her tune when he inherits a group of penguins. But what was especially bothersome is when the children turn on him for deciding to give the penguins to a zoo. I won't pretend to be an expert on penguins, but I feel like a zoo is a more appropriate place for them than a high-rise New York apartment. There's also Jingle All the Way, where Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to huge lengths to buy an in-demand Christmas toy for his son. The message of the movie is that getting a Turbo Man doll will finally allow him to reconcile with his son, because material possessions matter a lot more than just being supportive and being able to afford to have a good home and a nice Christmas dinner. Schwarzenegger's character clearly works really hard, as shown as genuinely disappointed at missing his son's karate graduation and can buy his child any toy he wants, but then we would not have 90 minutes of comedic shenanigans. Evan Almighty features Steve Carell's children annoyed that he puts his newly elected congressman position over family trip. He literally just got the job in Washington, D.C. Can you at least wait for him to settle in and assume his responsibilities before going on vacation? This is not just exclusive to parents and their children, though. Erin Brockovich has Erin's boyfriend complain that she works too much and doesn't spend enough time with him. Keep in mind, in the first act of the movie, we see her struggling to find a job, pay rent, and feed her children. And then she finally finds a well-paying job that she's passionate about that has her helping the local community. So I have a hard time feeling sympathetic towards her boyfriend and his complaints. Now, is there a way to avoid the issues I have with this premise? Well, one filmmaker who's often used the absentee father to good effect is Steven Spielberg. He has frequently depicted fathers consumed by their work and other interests to the detriment of their children. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Catch Me If You Can, and War of the Worlds are a few examples of Spielberg movies that show either father growing apart from their offspring or learning to reconnect with them. And I think what Spielberg does well is portraying the father's flaws and giving us an understanding of both parent and child's point of view. The most notable example of this is in Hook. In that movie, the grown-up Peter Pan is a workaholic who is obsessed with his job. What sets Peter apart from the previous fathers I mentioned? For starters, the movie is not afraid of portraying him as not particularly likable in the first act. He's frequently irritated with his children, particularly his son Jack, and shows little to no interest in their endeavors. So the frustrations of Jack and Maggie actually make sense, and this later motivates the former's eventual adoption of Captain Hook as a father figure, because Hook takes advantage of Peter's inattentiveness and pretends to like Jack's interests, thus manipulating him. I actually think Hook is a brilliantly constructed and layered screenplay for the way it shows how Peter's loss of inner child ultimately hurts his relationship with his children. Part of what inspired Hook was actually Spielberg's own concerns that his obsession with work might cause him to miss out on seeing his children grow up. The scene where Peter finally takes flight again because of the happy thoughts brought about by remembering Jack's birth and his wish to be a father feels very reflective of Spielberg's emotions at the time he was making the film. Going back a few decades earlier, Mary Poppins also handled the workaholic father plot well. The filmmakers made Mr. Banks into someone who was only interested in hiring a nanny for his children and a lot more focus on his bank job. We're meant to sympathize with Jane and Michael Banks, but remember when I mentioned before how these sorts of movies could explore the effect that a workplace can have on employees? Mary Poppins does exactly that by showing how working at the bank plays a role in Mr. Banks' prickly personality. There's even a great scene where Bert tries to explain what their father goes through every day at his job, thus giving them a great understanding about why he's such a workaholic and so absent in their daily lives. This is the kind of scene I feel is missing in so many of these workaholic father movies, where the children learn how hard their parent works to support them and make sure there's always food in the kitchen. Liar Liar is another film that I think utilizes this plot device well. The main issue Max encounters with his father, Fletcher Reed, is not that he's frequently working, but rather that he constantly lies and makes empty promises that just end up disappointing him. A key scene is when Max is brought to the law firm, and he sees the lies his father tells others, showing he's not alone in how he's treated by him. His magical birthday wish is not, "I wish my father worked less and spent more time with me." His wish is for Fletcher to never tell a lie. Fletcher's arc throughout the movie thus becomes realizing the hurt these lies cause Max and the way they've affected his parenting and their bonding. We also see how the constant lying in the courtroom results in Fletcher having an inflated ego, and the comedic mishaps that ensue from this magical predicament eventually humble him. One recent movie that managed to somewhat subvert this was actually Christopher Robin. When the movie started, it seemed like it would go down the typical workaholic father route, with the wife and daughter complaining about him ducking out of a weekend trip for his work, even though a major reason for this was because Christopher Robin was trying to save the jobs in his department from being cut. However, the climax of the movie switches this up and has the daughter rushing to help her father at his job, with the assistance of Winnie the Pooh and friends, of course. However, most of these movies just have the parent learn the lesson, while the children come away with not understanding that he tries his best and works hard so his family can be supported. I come away feeling bad for the parent and all the stress they're under, but strongly disliking the child characters, which I don't think was the filmmaker's intention. See you next time.